Joining me on the screen now are three executives who know a thing or two about goals, setting them, believing in them, achieving them. Today, we're going to connect and talk about powering up with purpose. Purpose being our inner anchor, the foundation in each of us, and how that shows up in work and in life. I was excited, I will tell you, to not only talk about women's purpose, but specifically to talk to Carolyn, Pippa, and Jennifer, because each of these leaders leads with an anchor. You'll see it, you'll feel it. They're firm in who they are, what they're capable of, and what they spend their time doing. And there's this sense of inner congruence to how they lead and who they are. I can't wait for us to explore that together. And I thank each of you for being part of the ElleExcel community and being willing to share your experiences with us. All right, now let me dive in. I'd love to first introduce you to Carolyn Booth. So there's so many things to me that come to mind when I think of Carolyn Booth. The first is confidence, undeniable confidence, I will say. The kind of confidence that runs deep and broad and is powered by a relentless inner momentum, a wave that never breaks. You only need to look at her to realize that it works. The second thing that comes to mind when I think of Carolyn is kindness. She's the first person to look to the incoming person in a room to ensure they have a seat. And when you visit the Chicago office, she will show you where the coffee is, where the restrooms are, as though it's her home, and you are a welcome guest. She holds in her memory banks stories of what was once done, why, and whether or not it worked. She has the ability to talk long-range strategy and banker targets all in one breath. And even while she might know something and know that you don't, she will coach you to your collective best so all boats in the room can rise. She makes room at the table for all women and all people, so diverse voices can not only be heard, but you're encouraged to speak up. She's the first to celebrate another individual, to put up her hand to take a task that no one wants, and to dig in to solve an issue. Yet she does it, I would say, with a level of grace, combined with confidence that somehow makes it just look effortless and easy. All while being a mom, running a business with over 7,000 people, golfing with the girls, taking to the water and spending time with family. And while I am at the same leadership table as Carolyn ongoing, I like to watch her. I like to listen. And I like to learn from her every day because it makes me better as a leader, as a woman. So thank you so much for being here today, Carolyn, and for who you are. So Carolyn, when we see highly accomplished, self-motivated women, I wonder, where does it come from? Was it a seed that was planted and grew when you were young? Was it a fire always in your belly? Was it in you, Carolyn, or where does this drive come from and what motivates you?
Carolyn, you're on mute.
Mm-hmm. She is conveying this through interpretive dance, and she's killing it, I will say. And Carolyn's had some Teams issues today, so we're going to give her a moment. And I'm going to come back to you, Carolyn, with your question. You just highlight yourself when you're ready, and I'll start with Pippa, and we'll dash back and help you out. So in the thick haze of life and the quagmire of data, the confusion of corporate life, there's every now and again a sage, simple voice who brings clarity to just about everything. And that clarity is part of the daily dose of Pippa Eric. And with the incredible blend of intellect, practicality, and personality, she delivers a punch, but in a way that doesn't harm, it only helps. And what a skill in a world where women are forever looking to crack and push through that crack and assert themselves. And I'll tell you, when I first met Pippa, I felt this poise and confidence, like a woman very comfortable in her own shoes, which were very funky, by the way, because she's a bit of a fashionista. But by the same time, she was hip and humorous and down to earth. And I also felt this kindred analytical spirit, which in all honesty surprised me because of my own very internal and incorrect, I will say, bias about HR. Her mastery of numbers and facts and projections was solid. And then there was this one day, it was my first week back to the office, actually after my stepfather had passed away from a brain tumor, and I was scraping by. And I walked by an office where Pippa sat in a hallway and said a casual hello. And she invited me in to talk. And rather than talk about my loss and swarm me with raw emotion and pepper me with questions, I just clearly wasn't capable of handling that. But she just started sharing. She talked about the loss of her own mom and what that felt like for her, the struggle and the peace. It was human and kind and also very wise. And in that moment, I felt an air of energy I needed to get through the day, frankly, without bursting into tears. And I don't pretend to know you, Pippa, well at all, but what I do know is awesome. And I think others will feel the same on the screen. Thank you so much for being here. Now, Pippa, I often find that to understand a woman, you scratch at her roots, understanding a bit about where she came from, who she was raised by, and who her role models were. These things that kind of shape us, let's say, as human beings. And as a woman, it often becomes the yardstick that tells us what's possible. So please tell us a bit about you, your background, and motivation.
Well, thank you, Lori, and it's such a pleasure to be here today. My background is a little bit eclectic, quite honestly, and I am in HR now. However, it has been a long and winding road to this actual juncture. I was born in Toronto and grew up here, but studied abroad, and through the course of my early career, met my now husband, whose name is Rob, and he is Dutch. And so meeting Rob at E&Y, at the time I was at E&Y, led me on what has been quite an amazing journey of experience and love, and just a phenomenal path that has come to fruition. And so together with Rob, we lived in Holland for 10 years, where I worked at ABN AMRO Bank in risk. And that was after having started my career at E&Y in a sort of niche capital markets risk management group. And then we moved back to Canada in 2003 with my two kids. And I've been at BMO ever since, and feel the privilege of having been at BMO ever since. And really, my time at BMO has been so fulfilling, because I remember coming in, and at the time I joined BMO as a chief risk officer for technology and operations. And at the time I said to the head of talent, please, I'm happy to join in this role, but I am really keen to work in different areas of the bank. What inspires me and what motivates me is the different nuances in cultures between the business, between technology, between corporate areas. I had often in my consulting background really served as a mediator between technology and operations and the business, which, as many of you would know, can sometimes be a relationship filled with friction. And so at the time, the head of talent at BMO, April, said, well, absolutely, we can do that for you. And I would say in the past 13 years at BMO, I have been in risk, I have been in technology and operations, I've been in the retail bank, I have been in marketing, and I am now in HR. And so my great fortune at having been exposed to different areas of the bank has really been a dream come true for me. And that goes down to motivation. What motivates me, you asked. I love, and maybe it's my management consulting background, I love new challenges, and I love the concept of sink or swim. And I think over time, after you've tried that concept of sink or swim, so take that risk, go do something that you're not familiar with. I had no HR background. Commit to learning from it, but in committing to learn from it, you also have to commit to understanding that you're not going to get it right all the time, and that that's okay, and that you're going to, in that sort of area of sink or swim, you might sink for a little bit, but at the end, you're going to swim faster from having sunk a little bit. And so that's sort of my mantra. I love to take on new challenges and absorb myself in the learning so that I can swim.
Amazing. Well, what a tour you've taken to get to the place you're at. And I now understand the background on the numbers. Chief Risk Officer, had no idea. I'm learning on the fly here. And Carolyn, I'm going to double back to you here on the source of your drive. Like so often when we see highly accomplished, self-motivated women. I wonder, where does that come from? And where was that seed planted? Was it when you were young? Was that fire always in your belly? What was it for you, Carolyn?
All right. Thanks, Lori. And trusting you can hear me this time.
You sure
I'm
can. You
told
sound
in
great.
The background that it's working. So it's such a great question. I think I'm lucky I had a few extra seconds to think this one through a bit. And I think it was seeds from the childhood. I had as great an upbringing as you could have asked for. Middle-class parents, first generation college graduates. And I can't remember them ever raising their voice to me growing up. But boy, did they wield that, power of disappointment fiercely. And that was really their superpower. They brought us up not wanting to disappoint. And I realize now, whether that was a teacher or a coach or a friend or family, we were brought up not to disappoint others. So I think when I started in the bank, it was really about heads down, work hard. That not wanting to disappoint really arced into my career, and I didn't want to disappoint my leader. I think with time and maturity, though, it actually morphed into something more powerful, which is more this sense of, I don't want to disappoint myself. And I think that kind of has driven me more in the latter part of my career. And it's around, making sure that I'm intentional around how I show up, how I help others, how I make room for others, as you were sort of saying. And so I think it matured into something that was more powerful. It was more about self-accountability and not wanting to disappoint myself in what I wanted to do for others. So I think I try to do it with my kids. I try to figure out this magic of creating this culture of not wanting to disappoint others, because I think for me, the experience was that it matured into something better, which is not disappointing myself. And that's really what drives me. It's the standards I set for myself, not the standards others set for me.
I love that. And that quiet voice, that persistent voice, but external, but internal. I see that in the growth, and wow, what good footing. And I'm going to introduce you now to Jen Hawkins on the screen. And Jen and I actually started the same week at BMO, and we're members of the same leadership team. We both had a background in credit cards, so we quickly found common ground, and we decided to take over the world together, optimizing credit lines and price and really anything you can think about. So, Jen, if you know Jen, she's as tough as she is smart. She's an athlete. All you need to do is meet her on the tee box or a ski hill to realize that. She's also a dancer, the kind that can rip it up at any company Christmas party with the best of them into the wee hours. I've been with you, Jen. Where the music is there, you'll find Miss Hawkins dancing somewhere, anywhere. She's got this infectious smile and beautiful blue eyes. You can see this. She's a cut to the chase kind of person. And when she asks a question, brace yourself, because it's going to be a doozy, and it will cause you to think. This woman doesn't miss a thing. And when I think about resilience and I think about grace under pressure, Jen comes to mind. She's a beautiful woman in a garden wearing camouflage tights while on a conference call and running a meeting all at the same time. Like, she's a force. And I'm happy to call her my friend, my forever colleague and gardening buddy, a fierce woman whom I look up to. Thank you, Jen, for being here.
Thanks, Lori. It's great to be here, and along with Carolyn and Pippa.
Amazing. Well, listen, we often think about accomplished people as being very goal-driven, and I think of you this way, actually. And as I worked alongside you and watched what you paid attention to, the questions you asked, your kind of laser-like focus, what role does goal setting even play in your life? Are you a big goal-focused person? Do you set resolutions? Do you track these goals? And what's one really juicy goal you've set for yourself for the year?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes, yes, and yes. I'm actually quite goal driven. And as I was listening to you talk about goals earlier, I'm maybe not quite as goal driven with you, like in terms of the Excel spreadsheet, but I'd put goals into like work goals and, simple tools. Like, when we had offices with walls, now I just have a small desk. I'd have like 5 key strategic goals. You put them on the wall and they look at you every day. And if you're not spending a whole chunk of your time on one of those 5, you've gone off the tracks. and despite my desire to go digital, I still walk around with a little book. And at the beginning of every week, like, what are the things I'm working on? And I cross them off. And yeah, some things don't get done and they go to the next week. And then some get completely forgotten that, oh yeah, I said I was going to do that in the meeting. But generally, I'm goal oriented. I'd say I'm quite goal oriented when it comes to sport. So I was given one of these, Garmin trackers, and I am like, yeah, how many high minutes have I had in terms of exercise, all the rest of it. I've kind of got hooked into Strava. I joined 8 years ago, the BMO Ride to Conquer Cancer team, no idea how to clip into a bike. And that's been a great journey. It introduced me to a new sport I didn't know how to do before. So that's definitely a goal every year to do the ride. I don't worry about it too much anymore. And big hairy goal for me this year is actually more, again, back to sport. So my son and I did a half marathon in the fall.
Oh, wow.
I got COVID 2 weeks before and still did it. And that's because when I first started working, I took up running because sitting at a desk, I quickly realized was bad, just health-wise. And I did a whole bunch of 10Ks in the first summer. I was early 20s. And someone convinced me to do a half marathon, and I taught myself out of it at 3:00 in the morning the night before, and I didn't do it. And I was in a blue funk for the next 3 weeks. So that is why if you sign up for a goal, especially a sports one, I have to do it. So my goal this year is to do another half marathon at the end of May. My son's decided to do the whole marathon, but I'll just stick with the half marathon. That's good. And then I'll switch to training for the Ride to Conquer Cancer that's at the beginning of June.
Oh, well, you don't aim high at all. I'm scraping to get through Friday. Well done, Jen. And Carolyn, our team spent so much time talking together about goal setting for the front lines and targets and you name it. But like here you are as the woman running it all and managing a very full life. I'm curious, what role, Carolyn, does goal setting play in your own life? And when you look ahead to 2024, what's the one thing you're focused on achieving both personally and professionally?
Sure. So I was doing the math. It's probably 20 quarters now that we've been goaling together, Lori. And so it feels like we're family on that. And as your team well knows, I always approach goal setting through the lens of, and how is that goal going to make the team feel, right? If it's going to demotivate, then we're not doing good work. And so I've always, I guess, believed goals inherently need to be motivating, and to be motivating, they need to feel good. So that's sort of the lens through which I think about goals. And I think I also approach it from the lens of more, what can I start doing as opposed to stop doing? I don't know why that is, but it's always been a bit of my DNA, I guess. And I think at work, I feel so exposed by my goals because everybody knows them. Everybody talks about them. My goal setting document is enormous, and the amount of things that are measured in the role that I have. I would say I probably tilt the other way when it comes to goals I set for myself. There is so many things that numerically we track and monitor. So my goals are much more in this feeling space. So when I think about the personal side, over the last year and 2.5 years, really, we have all been in the US, yourself, Lori, so many others, heads down on this acquisition. And I would say I have not been present the way I need to be for my family, for others. And so my kids are now 16 and 20. That time at home is closer to an end than beginning. And so for me personally, it's about, how do I get more intentional? How am I more present for the family now that hopefully we've gotten a little bit of that pig through the python with the acquisition. And I would say on the professional side, again, in the spirit of what we have been through, there is so much still to do. We're all so busy. I think I'm busier than I've been in my 32 years at BMO. And it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole and think of all the things that aren't going well, all the things that need to be done. So my personal professional goal was to show up with optimism and to make sure that I check myself every morning and I don't get dragged down by the things that I haven't accomplished or the team hasn't accomplished, and look for the things to feel optimistic about, because I think that is really going to help fuel us forward. And I said from day one, you know, as we went into this work, all of us together, if we don't keep the people, our customers and colleagues will fail. And so my goal is show up optimistically, create that environment where people feel like they're winning, even when it's tough.
You know, that what I spoke about at the top of the hour around public versus private goals and the vulnerability affiliated with that, you've just captured it. You know, the higher you go, sometimes your goals do become public. You're thrust into that space of accountability. But I love your attunement to the need for inner balance and what you need to do against your pillars, whether it's for you or the me or the we pillar. It's like a rebalancing, and we're not always firing on all cylinders for all four of them at every time. So it's wise of you to even notice that and achieve on all fronts. And I know in ElleExcel, I've talked a lot about these four pillars. I just so believe in them as a way to a balanced life. As someone who's over tilted on every single one of them at any one moment in time, I'm still trying to figure out my own algorithm. But when we talk about those four pillars, the me, we, well, lead, and the overall importance of each one, each pillar working in concert with one another to help women excel in all aspects of their lives. You just gave us a great example. So here we are at work, and you're encouraging people to set goals. And I do wonder, what is the role of an organization in the context of setting goals that are beyond the work output itself? Like, do companies have a role, Pippa, in your view, to excel holistically? And if so, like, what's that look like to you?
So absolutely, I think companies have such an amazing opportunity to help all of us achieve goals that we have for ourselves and goals that we have for the business. And I think, you know, when I reflect on my 13 years at BMO, and for those on the call who are from BMO, and for those who are not, loving to share this, I don't think I've ever felt a point in the past 13 years that we are at today in which the alignment of our goals and strategy as an organization is so clear. I do recall, and I've shared this before, when I first came to BMO, I remember thinking I'd come from ABN AMRO, and I'd come from an environment in which the strategy was clear to me as an executive at the bank. And I remember coming and actually going on to the intranet site to try to anchor myself in the company's strategy. And I couldn't find material anywhere. And that is by no means to say there wasn't a strategy. Of course, there was a strategy, but it wasn't one that actually trickled down to the team level or the individual level. And it certainly wasn't one where every employee had the elevator pitch around what are we trying to do, what are the desired outcomes, and how do we want to do it. And so I reflect on where we're at today at BMO, where all of us understand Ambition 2025. For those who are not with BMO, that is the name of our strategy. And we all understand the journey we've been on from a winning culture perspective to, in the context of setting goals, align our goals, empower our people to deliver against those goals, and then recognize our people for delivering those goals. And so to me, that has been such a powerful manifestation of how an organization can rally an entire population of 50,000 employees in service of the company strategy, where goals are clear, your role in achieving that strategy is clear, and you're going to be recognized for your part in delivering against those goals. So absolutely, I've seen the power of it, Lori.
Thank you. You know, the one thing I'd add to that is really this balance of wellness. And as a leader leading teams, I think there's this obligation to help individuals succeed, feel alignment to those strategies. But I really do feel that there's an obligation to us as leaders to keep and help people be well. You know, if you notice they're tired, if you notice they need a bit of a refuel, if you're rushing in between meetings and there's no time to eat, to signal and take out and say, listen, this is more important. Like, you having fuel is more important than me rushing and cramming things down your head in the short time frame we have. And I see that tilt organizationally. I think more and more organizations, inclusive of our own, are focused more on wellness. They're focused more on the entire individual, whether it's through benefits from a very formal perspective, all the way through to just the care with which someone leads. And that's important to me as a woman who's just trying every day to step up to the plate and hit some singles and on the occasional home run, just to make sure that I have what it is I need in my tank to succeed, and that the people around me appreciate that as a human being. You know, you're there to do a job, no question, but they appreciate who you are as a human being. They're checking in with you. They're seeing how you're feeling that day. They're seeing how your family life is. They're checking to see, do you have all the gas in your tank that you need? And Jen, I wanted to pivot to you for a moment, because I know, as you all know, we all set out to do these things in life, and life kind of gets in the way, right? Doesn't it? It has other plans for us. We've all experienced this, some in different ways than others. And all the things we thought we were sort of slated to do are put on ice suddenly. And I know this was true for you at one point in your life, and I wondered if you could share with us what that pivot was.
Absolutely. So, as some of you may know, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer at the very beginning of 2020. But, you know, the backup to that was, you know, as you just heard me talk about fitness, and the reason I work out is for stress reduction. So I've been doing this for a decade or two. And so generally I'm not very sick. And through the fall of 2019, I was starting to feel a little run down. And so went to the doctor and, you know, did some tests, and she said I had this stomach condition called diverticulitis. And should I start to feel like really bad, I should probably take myself to the hospital and not try and wait it out. So I did actually end up doing that on December 1st, which was a Sunday morning, because emergency departments can take a long time to get through. And you know, I did send a text to my team saying, I'll just be here for a couple of days. Well, I turned out to be there for 10 days, then home for 10 days. And by which time I'd already canceled the travel plans for the holidays, and decided on December 23rd that I needed to go back to the hospital, which was a hard day because I knew highly likelihood I would be in the hospital for Christmas, which I was, and wasn't getting better. And eventually someone came along and said, we really need to look inside of you. I had not had a colonoscopy before, and did that. And we discovered a very large tumor, which by that time I was like, great, we have found the problem. There's only so many antibiotics I can take. And had it, you know, confirmed the next day that it was cancerous. So I didn't have a long time to wait to hear that news. And then the next day I had surgery. And then a week later I was discharged from hospital. And a couple of weeks later, it started my chemo, which was for 6 months. And so, yeah, that was a complete, like, out of left field, putting your life on pause, and coincided with the pandemic. So while for everybody else who, especially at work, was working overtime, my life was already very quiet, and it just remained quiet for that period. And so your goals do change. I mean, you step back and you think more about, you know, health has always been important, but you frame that in for me, it was not about why am I here and looking back and what could I have done differently. It's more, okay, what opportunity does this give me? And it's opportunity like, well, because it was pandemic, my daughter was at home and we got to chat on the sofa at 11:30 at night and connect, because we haven't been able to do that. You know, she was at university at the time, for example. So it was really about pacing myself. And then I knew I wanted to come back to work. And then so when I did come back to work, again, just being easy on myself, right? Mm-hmm. Both physically and mentally. And remember at that time, 2021, everybody's talking about, I'm going to take my meetings walking, I'm going to take walking breaks and all the rest of it. I did try and do that. And I remember saying, I'm not busy enough. Like, I've got these projects, but you know, you get busier over time, and I didn't have a clear mandate when I came back, and I worked on that, and over the next 18 months have a clear role. And so that was important to me, because part of it was trying to figure out, what's my role, what's my position, what am I doing? And so I think having a clarity of a mandate, having clarity of I have a team and this is our role has helped me along the journey. Because frankly, there's some days you think, well, my sideline now, people forgotten about what I can do and what I'm capable of. And so rebuilding confidence, to be honest. And so last year was a great year for me because I oversaw our acquisition of Air Miles, but it felt, it took a couple of years, but it felt like I was back doing the kind of things that I like to do. And I was in my element. And so that it is a journey, and you have to be kind to yourself. And I've always asked people to work on a team like I do, because we spend time focused on the future. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity. And that was my opportunity for me to be comfortable with ambiguity and say, you know what, like Pippa and I and other colleagues who spend a lot of time on culture. When someone told me to lead the culture work, I really had no idea what we were talking about, or what it was we were trying to do, right? But you just work through it. And as Pippa said, you're learning a new skill set on the job, and that is totally acceptable and actually enjoyable. And you look back and go, okay, I did it. And so net, it wasn't all a bad experience. It has been an opportunity to reflect and really be clear on what's important in my life.
What's amazing to me, I mean, you're amazing on every level, but honestly, Jen, it's that idea when you're in that situation, you get a diagnosis like that, it's really, I imagine, incredibly hard not to do the ruminations and to reflect back and dwell on the present situation. You're a woman and move, like you're on the move. You're thinking about the next thing, the next best thing, the movement ahead, the next job. And that is the end, that inner fuel is everything. I'm just listening to a podcast now on the Model Health Show, and it talks about your brain and it shaping your health outcomes. And there's increasingly more and more research around that. And I mean, you're evidence of that. You are evidence of that, and you're so inspiring. And it takes a lot of courage to share a story like you have, and also you fundraise, and you've taken something that most would just look at and go, oh my God, this has got me down for the count. And you turned it around and you've transformed and built a new role for yourself and added value. I have my deepest respect. And you saw all the hearts on the screen, and hopefully you're absorbing the love in the chat thread. But thank you for the courage. And I am curious also about one thing, that is how you went from running a cards business and a busy life with 2 kids and a slate of hobbies to managing through cancer to your return to work in another role. Like, did you change how you define success before and after?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, for me, the first step in the success was, okay, what is my role, and what is, am I going to have a team, and what is the definition of success of the team, and convincing others around me that was an important mandate, and there's room at the table for that role. And I think the other thing is I don't sweat the small things as much as I used to, right?
Yeah,
and I was just thinking, right, and definitely for those of you that know the cards business, when we first started working together, there were some very up and down days, and down days you're like, oh my gosh, I misplanned by $10 million. I'm sure I'm going to get walked out the door tomorrow. But for example, this week, we had an audit reported on Air Miles related to cyber, and like we knew we had more work to do on cyber with Air Miles. But I know that the people that are working on it are very good at what they do. I'm not no cyber expert, but it's fine, right? Yes, we need improvement, but it'll get done. And I think maybe myself 5 years ago would have been completely sweating that, oh, it looks bad. It's going to be fine. Like, we will learn and move on. And so I don't ruminate as much because of that experience. Yeah. I'm very clear that there is a mind-body relationship, and a positive mindset is really important, whether you're healthy or sick or thinking about work. And so I tie it back to what Carolyn said, like to come in with a positive mindset, I think is so important as a leader, but also personally. Absolutely. So I think that's something that is more top of mind for me now.
Yeah, it's perspective, isn't it? Thank you for that. Pippa, I'm switching gears for a moment, but so many of us on the line are dealing with aging parents and elder care and coming to terms with the loss of a loved one and a parent. And sadly, you and I have that in common, with your losing your mom and my losing my dad. And of course, while we're losing our parents, we're working, we're parenting, we're trying to care for ourselves, and in the process of all of this loss. So just in a couple words, what did you learn through the course of losing your mom, and how did you manage through it, and what advice would you offer to other women going through that?
Well, I think Jen has touched a lot on this, and I saw in the chat Michelle was referencing her Army-based training and reminding ourselves of the power of the mind. I really set out. I find as I'm getting older, I'm very deliberate about thought patterns, and you know, I really do wake up every morning and practice gratitude. And part of that had to do with, so Lori, you know this story, but my mom from diagnosis to death was 10 days with a brain tumor. And so the family had to rally really quickly around, and she was on that day before the 10th day, she was totally normal, healthy, and spry. And so it was a very quick death, but amidst the fact that it was a very quick death, there really was this sense of beauty in the way in which she passed. And my ability, certainly helped by the hospice in which she was for those, or 5 of those 10 days, was the ability to look more philosophically at the passing of life, the gratitude that she died in peace with dignity, that she had a homemade quilt from the hospice under which she lay, that the hospice brought her favorite white flowers into her room every day, that we were able to be around her as she passed. And so these are all like heart-wrenching things on the one hand. On the other hand, I am at peace with how my mom passed. And I try to take all the beautiful moments of that passing, knowing we are all going to pass, and channel it into some of the things that Carolyn was talking about, positivity. You know, we're all going to have to deal with really difficult challenges in our life, and the extent to which we can actually practice deliberately trying to take the best out of those moments and infuse them into the way in which we live our lives is really important, and has worked extremely well for me.
Amazing.
I don't have a lot of crying moments. It's more moments of gratitude for what has been and what will be.
What wisdom. Thank you. Now listen, we're gonna go from cancer and aging parents to something positive and lift this up. And I'm posing a question to you because through ElleExcel, we've each explored the idea of what makes each of us remarkable, and as a hallmark for self-confidence and a nod to all that we are and all that we do. And as hard as it is to say in a phrase, what makes you remarkable? Pippa.
I actually think that what makes me remarkable is the fact that I never see myself as remarkable. And it doesn't mean that I lack confidence or comfort in who I am, but I'm always trying to put myself through the lens of being a regular human being who is just wanting to make a difference.
Love that. Carolyn, what makes you remarkable?
I think having raised a son with disabilities has taught me a lot, and it's taught me to realize everybody has a gift. And so I think my what makes me remarkable is I look for the gift in everyone.
Oh, I love that. I see that in you. Jennifer, what makes you remarkable?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think when I think about myself, I'm fairly determined. I'm your typical elder child. I like to solve problems, and I'm very more recently focused on gratitude and being positive. So I think that those are all things that make me an authentic person.
And then some. Carolyn, I'm going to switch gears for a moment, and I want to talk about bias. Many of us want to believe that it doesn't exist, right? Or exists less. Let's say when we develop coping mechanisms to manage through it, we suit up, we get these Teflon jackets on, and we convince ourselves that it doesn't affect us. Yet more and more, I speak to women around me who progress through the ranks, and every one of us has a story of bias, managing through it or navigating setbacks. And some have faced microaggressions and sometimes overt aggressions. And I just want to ask you, was this true for you? And what'd you do about it? What'd you learn?
Sure. So I do think this is one we have to be honest on, because as much as we have a wonderful culture in this organization. You know, there are pockets. I think the example I'll use, it's an older one, but it did have a lot of impact on me. It was probably 20-ish years ago. I was stepping up into my first senior manager role. I was like so full of pride. I was so excited. I was, you know, getting permission of entry into this new level of the organization and a new peer group. And we were a group of 19, 2 were women and 17 were men. And probably 2 days after the announcement, we were doing a big reorganization at the bank in personal banking. But 2 days after this big announcement of this reorganization, there was a dinner to celebrate everyone's new roles, the 19 people. The only problem was only 17 people were invited. And then myself and the other women were not invited to this dinner with spouses. And so, as things always do in this company, I learned about it through the grapevine. It was the water cooler that sort of made me aware of what had taken place. And, you know, that spread very quickly through the organization. And I'd say, fortunately, it got to the ears of my leader. Because at that age, I was in my early 30s, newly exposed to a senior leadership role. I didn't know what to do with this. And so a leader that I respect enormously immediately got everyone together to have a conversation. He demanded apologies for the 2 women for what took place. And you know, he did the right thing. And I think, you know, for myself, I accepted the apologies. And the one thing I was proud of, I did have the courage to say, you know, I'm a big girl. Like, you know, I don't need friends. We don't have to be friends, but we do have to have mutual respect. And I said, what I'm more concerned about is the impact you just had on every young woman in the organization and how they are now feeling about, you know, their opportunity and the culture and the environment that they're working in. So I think, you know, in the reels at the beginning, the inspirational quote reel, Oprah said, wounds into wisdom. So, I mean, this hurt. It hurt a lot when I was so full of confidence, and it totally cut me down at the knees. I took 2 lessons from that. One was my leader role modeled beautifully. So you cannot tolerate these kind of situations when they happen. You have to have the courage as a leader, as a peer, as whatever, to talk about them, because if not, the environment just becomes toxic. And I think more importantly, it also taught me the importance of having a strong we. You know, I shed a lot of tears over, you know, being so overtly excluded. And I would say that if I didn't have the husband, the family, the friends, that strong we that I could have gone to, I think it would have had a bigger impact on my mental health and on my confidence. And having that we outside of the bank was really important, because stepping into a senior role, I couldn't go to the workplace and vent about this. I had to go somewhere else to work through those emotions. So that was kind of the story.
Amazing. And what wisdom you gained from it. But also, you didn't ignore the opinions and didn't ignore the feeling. Like, you faced it head on, and then made good with it. So good on you for doing that, and thanks for sharing. And Pippa, I know working in an HR function with a larger proportion of females, we may assume that bias or microaggressions don't exist there. We might think of it as more of a male-female dynamic, and yet competition among women specifically is something few of us like to think about or even talk about, but honestly, it exists. And I wondered if you could shed some light on your personal experience related to having navigated bias and what it was like for you, what you did about it, and learn from it.
Well, it's funny because we have not shared respective responses to these questions. And as I listened to Carolyn, I think building upon what she said, she gave an example of male, female. I actually have a point in time in my career, been blessed with amazing bosses who have been champions, sponsors of me, and I feel incredibly blessed. I did have one boss who was a female at one point in my career, and I was not her chosen candidate to go into a role. I did not know her. She did not know me. but I was placed in a role to work for her. I admired her immensely from everything that I knew about her, and all I wanted to do was serve her and do a good job. And this particular woman, a fantastic woman, so this is not any judgment on her, but she had preconceived notions, A, of me, B, of the fact that she was not able to make the decision herself about who she wanted in that role, and sort of felt that I was put on her lap. And I remember working so hard. I was an executive. I remember working so hard for months to try to make this woman, to deliver for her behind the scenes. I do have very much a style of servant leadership. I was not looking to get accolades. I was simply looking to advance her agenda. And I was shut out. And I came to a point, and this goes to a little bit of confidence in yourself and who you are. I came to a point where it's not sustainable for me anymore. I tried, and it clearly wasn't working. And it wasn't personal. I recognized it was not personal. It was not about me, who I was. This was far more complicated. This woman was going to retire, and there was just all sorts of things packed up in it. And so I had a choice. And I chose to do two things. Number one, even go more behind the scenes. So instead of trying to establish myself in a new role, in a new area of the organization by networking and trying to create relationships, it was really about moving a little bit further behind the scenes to allow this woman who was going to retire to be front and center. And then secondly, to sit down with her and call it out and say, listen, I've been on the role for 2 months now. I've done everything within my power to do my job well, to serve you, to serve the organization. It is clear to me, I'm not hitting the mark. I'm not receiving a lot of feedback in terms of why I'm not hitting the mark from you. So I think we have to have an honest conversation about what hitting the mark means for you. And if we collectively determine that I am not the right person to hit that mark, then let's decide that now, and that's okay. And so that was a big moment in my career because I had come to my own personal boundaries of what is acceptable to me and what is not, and what makes me happy. And if I was coming home at night and upset or crying because somebody just wouldn't engage with me, I hit a boundary where I said, this is not going to work. And I've never had that in my career. Never. I've always had bosses who are amazingly supportive and the biggest sponsor of me.
Yeah, and good on you for distinguishing what's over here and their baggage and those issues and their perceptions versus what it is for you, and being comfortable to have each have its own space. And also, I think there's this subtext, and we've talked about it a ton in ElleExcel. It's like we can sometimes operate from an environment of scarcity. Oh my goodness, we're only 20% of the C-suite. Therefore, the table's rather small. So you better duke it out and make sure you find your place. When it's not, we're operating from an environment of scarcity rather than the idea that every time you elevate a woman, you elevate all women. Full stop. You do. And people begin to develop that perception that she's capable and she's capable and she's capable, and give her airtime, invite her to the party, and to Carolyn's comment, it becomes a watershed moment for us collectively, and we're better for it. And I know this Women's Circle is all about bringing together this constellation of support, which we've called it on this program a power pack, or I call it that to be cheeky. But can you share with us who's in your power pack and community of support? Where do you go and what do you do to refuel? Just in a few words, Pippa.
Family, of course, my own team, so my direct reports, and peers, very, very much peers. I work intensely with peers and value them immensely.
I love that. Thank you. Carolyn, who's your power pack?
I would probably say ditto. I think my core power pack is family, having moved so much. Our family is so tight, and I think the blessing has been I've found a power pack everywhere that we move. So I think when you're open and you're looking for that, it'll find you and you will find it.
Love that.
Family,
Jen.
peers, difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say family as well, but I also have a group of women through a leadership program called the Judy Project I did about 10 or 15 years ago. And we've been meeting regularly for the last dozen years or so. And so I go to them as well. They're in different industries. And I would also say it's important to know who not to go to. So I've learned over the years not to go to my parents because they've had some interesting reactions. Like, you want to do what? You want to take on another role? Don't you have enough on your plate? I did not tell them I was moving to BMO until it was done, because I'd learned that they didn't understand my ambition and what I was trying to achieve, and that this next role was really obvious and everybody said I should do it and I didn't even have to interview for it. So I've also learned where not to go.
That's hilarious. And it's sort of like if life were an NPS, you'd have promoters and detractors. Yeah, for each thing, right? Which I get. I do. I get it. You know, there's times when you're like, good God, like this is not a conversation I need to have with so and so. They're just going to weight me down. So good for you for having the wisdom to know that. And Carolyn, and I wanted to start with you because there's this belief, I think, that the higher you go, the more confident you are in yourself, and I can see that in you. But there's truth to that for sure. But sometimes we believe, I think falsely, that with progression and with time, that in voices in our heads die down, that those feelings of self-doubt go away, that we no longer have the sense of I'm not good enough or I'm not at the top of my game today. And I can tell you, for me, that any given Monday, self-doubt can go from a whisper to like a wave. Sometimes even drying up my words and self-confidence in the moment. You wouldn't gather today because I'm rather verbose and it's Friday. But you know what? Am I alone in this feeling, or is this resonating for you?
Yeah, I would say that it does. And but it's also sort of evolved for me, I would say, over the years. And in the early days, I would have had this internal voice. I describe it as deafening, right? Like it held me hostage. And I almost couldn't hear what people were saying because I was so in my own head. So I couldn't listen intently. But I think today, and it's probably come with confidence, it's come with experience, it's come with being more comfortable in your own skin. Now I actually try to use that internal voice a little bit more effectively and more productively, I guess, because I think there are thousands of decisions we make a day, little decisions, big decisions. And I think it's okay and it's healthy to check yourself sometimes and say, maybe I could have done that differently. Maybe I could have reacted differently. Mm-hmm. So I think some of that internal questioning, internal voice is healthy to an extent. And I think it's that last part that's the tricky part, right? And so I've been blessed to be able now in my life to be able to take the things, and I always say, you know, don't grow them out of proportion, or maybe better said, don't think them out of proportion. So give the issue the time it deserves, but then to be able to put it in a box and kind of put it aside and go back to it if you need it, if there was a lesson learned that you want to draw back on, and not make the same mistake twice. But I think I've gotten to a place of better managing that internal voice and some of that self-doubt more effectively, so that it's a more of a positive than a negative now. There's
a lot of quotable quotes in there. You're going to find yourself on a quote reel coming near to you, but one was don't think them out of proportion. I love that. Now, Pippa, same thing for you. Just briefly on the navigating uncertainty and the imposter syndrome. Is that true for you? Do you find yourself showing up with that self-doubt at some meetings, or is this old hat for you now?
I think similar to Carolyn, the way that I've approached it, back to the power of the mind, back to some concepts like gratitude and deliberate thinking patterns. I really try to look at any challenge or situation or self-doubt through the lens of, what can I learn through this? How can I approach this with a sense of vulnerability, understanding that I may fail and sink for a bit, but actually look at it through the lens of, what am I going to learn out of this, and how am I going to move forward and take it on to the next challenge?
Love that. Thanks. And to all of you in this order, Jen, I'm going to start with you. What are 2 things you do to care for yourself?
I take time outside of work to do things I enjoy. And so you've touched on one of them, gardening. It's creative. It takes time. The flowers come back every year, regardless of what's going on.
Amazing.
And the other one, no surprise, is exercise. It just reduces my anxiety, and I'm a better person, and I'm more calm for just taking the time to burn off some steam.
Love that. Carolyn, how do you care for yourself?
Yeah, I've never mastered the art of, sort of being able to fully quiet my brain, but I do yoga. I think that is sort of the way that I do quieten my internal thoughts. And then I would say the second thing is I find my me time in the morning. It drives my husband crazy. I get up way too early, but I need that 45 minutes where I can just go and read for pleasure. And nobody is bugging me, sending me an email or a text.
Oh, good discipline. Pippa.
For me, I like Carolyn, I'm up early. I'm up at 5, and like Jen, I'm biking. So I bike every day. And this winter has, despite the fact that it's a little bit concerning with the warmth, has been a great opportunity to continue to bike through the months of December and January. And it's going to sound a bit hokey. It has more to do with aura and atmosphere than the actual practice. I light a lot of candles. I think I have 50 candles in our house, and I do take it gives me great comfort to live in low light. It sounds weird. It sounds weird, but it's very calming.
No, it doesn't sound weird at all. And there's a candle coming to you. I like it, and way to go. Thank you for sharing it. And I guess what I notice in all of it is that there's stuff that you do to quiet the mind, and there's stuff you do to enrich the soul, all of you, and nurture your body. So I think it's great. That level of balance is great. And just to finish up here, for women to excel, like, what do you think we need to start doing and stop doing? Pippa.
I would say stop self-doubting and start. It was part of my quote, set your own boundaries. Don't hang your jacket on the back of your chair because you think it looks good that you're in the office when in fact you're picking up your child at a soccer game. Be proud in your work and rely on the results of your work and set your own boundaries.
Love that. Carolyn, start and stop. What's your advice?
Stop magnifying our flaws in ourselves and in each other, and just catch ourselves when we're holding that magnifying glass too close and thinking critically. And then, I think on the flip side, it's start believing more in ourselves and embrace the inner voice, embrace the butterflies in the belly, because it probably means we're stretching, and be a little more fearless.
Incredible. And Jen?
Similar to what Pippa said, I think stop comparing ourselves to others, right? Stop thinking about, well, if so-and-so is in that role, they'd be doing it like this. It doesn't matter. I'm doing it like this, and I'm in the role, and be confident. So I think that the second one is start being more confident. I say also start giving back more, right? It takes time to do mentoring conversations, things like this. I get so much energy from talking to people and sharing my experiences. So for me, it's also start giving back more.
Jen, Carolyn, Pippa, thank you. You are courage and candor on steroids, and I appreciate you sharing all of your personal stories, your advice, the places you've come from, and the places you're headed. I appreciate all of you, and thank you for giving us a yardstick to hope for, and you are women powered with purpose, no question. Thank you.
Thank you.